Chairman. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this Strategy and Resources Committee, which is a continuation of the meeting from the 26th of January 2023 in open session. Before we start with the main agenda items, I'm going to invite Councillor Fluker to correct some information that he provided during the earlier session on the 26th of January, and then after this I'll take apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. Really, I'm just going to correct what I say for the benefit of the record. Chairman, at the last meeting, I reported that the total current assets of the Citizens Advice Bureau had risen from £147,000 to £155,000, Chairman, and that they had 14 part-time staff and one member of staff was receiving £60,000 a year. Chairman, that was incorrect. I think I wouldn't have made the mistake, I think, if more information had been supplied on the evening. And I know that Ms Green's here tonight, and I'm sure that when this matter goes to Council in 2 weeks' time, the members will be fully informed. And I rather hope that the CAB actually provide management accounts up to at least December of last year. And I think it would be beneficial as well, Chairman, if we had a list of statutory duties that the CAB can perform. So, in summary, Chairman, my reference to £60,000 as one member of staff being paid was incorrect. I apologise to Council, and I apologise to Citizens Advice Bureau if it's caused any problems for them. And what I should have said was there's 14 part-time members of staff, and that on average they are paid £17,000 per annum. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker. Okay, moving on. I have apologies from Councillor Durham, and I have Councillor Jane Fleming substituting for Councillor Thompson. Do I have any other apologies for this evening? No.
Apologies from me for being a bit late.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome, Councillor Turner. That's terrible. Those farmers. Right. We'll move on now. Thank you, Councillor Shaughnessy.
I'd also like to give my apologies for being late, Chairman.
Absolutely no problem at all. I think the 7 o'clock's made it quite difficult to get here, and I'm actually surprised everybody's here, and it's only just after 7. Okay, right, we'll now move on to the agenda, and we have agenda item 14, which is the data management and insight strategy. And who's taking this one? Cheryl? Sure. Okay, Ms Hughes, could you do this one for us, please?
Good evening. So the UK National Data Strategy has set out best practice for use of data and insight. This report and the recommendations are intended to work towards this best practice. Essex partners have been developing the Essex Data Declaration in line with the National Strategy, which sets out partnership working and is attached as Appendix A of this report. Officers are recommending that we sign up to this. Additionally, officers have developed a modern data management and insight strategy, which is set out at Appendix B of your report. It sets out an ambition to be more data-driven and identifies our specific strengths and weaknesses in doing so. Shown on page 253 of the agenda pack. If members approve this strategy, officers will also develop an internal action plan against the 4 priorities set out in the strategy to report through to the Performance Governance and Audit Committee. Those 4 priorities are championing the use of data and analytics, building data literacy and capability, adopting responsible and accessible data, and delivering change, monitoring progress and measuring success. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I've got some questions, but we will pass it over to the floor. But before we do, we've got 3 recommendations. Little 1 is that members approve signing up to the Essex Data Declaration, which is in Appendix A. Little 2, that members review and approve the internal data management and insight strategy, which is Appendix B. And little 3 is that the committee recommends referral to the Performance, Governance and Audit Committee for action plan review and tracking due to links in committee responsibilities and circulation of the strategy to all members to promote a data-driven approach and awareness. Now, I have been told after the last meeting that I've been informed that you're only allowed to ask one question. So what I would say is that you need to ask one and then think very carefully about it. And if you need a supplementary, come back, but it will be discretionary.
Point of order, Chairman. I'm sorry that I'm sorry, Chairman, but this is contrary to what the procedure rules or the rules of procedure says. It says that members are allowed to speak for 3 minutes on any agenda item, and I think that beggars the question, Chairman. And I think we had this at council where you've got 8 or 9 recommendations where we did actually at council. Then for anybody only to be allowed to speak for 3 minutes disenfranchises their democratic right. So, Chairman, can you tell me who advised you to say that? Thank you.
It came in an email. I can't remember who told me, but I can get back to you on that one because it definitely came in an email to me. I was advised of it. Do you know who it was who sent that? I don't know. No, he doesn't know. No, I think it was sent to all of us. When you find out, can you ask that officer to propose a motion to council saying you're only allowed to ask one question? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lagan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it came out and it was directed for a piece of advice about when a motion is raised. And it was about the rules of procedure, but that was about a motion. So this is a debate on a recommendation within an order paper, which when I went through the Constitution and checked against that, didn't seem to apply. So I think it's down to the chairman's discretion if they feel that it would add debate. Yeah. And I would be very disappointed because I found personally from being in the chair that when a question's asked, it triggers a thought process that other members might go, I've got a supplementary question, or even maybe a couple. And you've been subject to that yourself.
We all have, yes, absolutely.
So I think that applies to a motion, and it's very clear, and there's reasons for, you can talk about urgent business as well. But I think that you can feel how the chamber's gone down, and I think it will be very remiss to stifle debate on what are really important transparent and urgent business items.
Yeah, Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the email referred to us not talking for more than 3 minutes. I think we can ask as many questions as we want within that 3 minutes, and that members can come back once, I think was the guidance.
I mean, I am pretty lenient in this committee, but we do need to move on. So what I'm saying is if we try and keep it concise, that would be much better for me as chairman, and we might finish before a ridiculous time at night. But Councillor Stamp?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Do you want to stand, Madam Chair, or are we
No,
sitting?
you're welcome
Okay.
to sit.
Thank you. I'd actually like to congratulate you on this last meeting, the one previous to this, because I thought it was very difficult to chair because you've got very strong members on this committee and we represent our residents. We represent our residents, and I cannot stand the thought that you're going to, or whoever is trying to stifle us when we've got important things to say. And also, if it's one question, you're going to have and when I want to speak, because I can't always think, as you know, straight away off the top of my head. And I write loads of notes down, which you'll see tonight if you want to check. But if you're going to try and limit us, I think that is really unfair and undemocratic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But if from the chair, it is to move the meeting on. Thank you, Councillor Swain.
Yes, I agree entirely with your point about conciseness and avoiding verbosity or whatever and prolonging things. But one needs possibility of coming back on items because otherwise it really prevents any sort of dialogue and reconsideration of one's view with additional information, which I see as quite a key point of these meetings.
Okay, right, moving on, because we've already done 5 minutes. So, right, moving on, we will now go back to the actual agenda item, which was the Data Management Insight Strategy. Councillor Siddle, is this related to the... It is. Good, perfect.
It is related to the... I think this report is excellent, and it's really something that will really add benefit to the council in terms of how we make decisions and how we measure our performance. So the more we can focus upon this and the more we can use this sort of strategy, I think it will be absolutely brilliant. So I recommend this thing and agree with everything that's in it.
Okay, Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to learn some more. I was particularly with this sort of thing, I always worry as to where the data ends up, and is it data that can be sold to other parties? I see that central government are consulting at the moment about data sharing, so for me I'd prefer that this was brought back at a later date when we can see the results of that central government consultation, because we do have to be careful with these areas, I think, with sharing residents' data. Anyway, I'll listen to everyone else's thoughts.
Ms Hughes?
Yes, so the intention for the data use in terms of sharing is working with our partners to identify key areas where we would like intervene or work for the residents of Malden. It's not to share it in terms of commercial profit or anything like that. It's purely for the purposes of driving services and working out how to deliver to our customers.
Okay, so where would the sharing start and end? Who are we sharing from to? And would it be as far as the National Health Service? Thank you, Councillor Fluker.
I think it depends on the partnerships that we're working in. So I would see it that particular partnerships like One Malden District might have a particular problem, and then it's looking at what data that we've got access to that might help with that. But it would be within defined partnerships where we would be sharing data.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just for clarity, and actually it follows on from something Councillor Fleming's just said about she'd be interested to know regarding this, and especially regarding residents' data. I mean, does it in any way affect, because we all know, well, I have put it on my emails about when we get information coming into us from residents and we say we won't share with third parties. So does it have a influence on that? Because in one hand I'm saying that, and then from what I'm reading from this, certain data could be shared. I understand you've just said partnerships, but actually that could be seen as third parties.
Yeah, so it'd never be at the raw data level that we would share things. So where I'm talking about sharing, we would be sharing things like insights. So for example, our recent resident survey and the insight that we've learned from that, we can compare with the recent Essex resident insight survey and what they've learned about the residents of Malden, rather than specific individual data.
Right, so it's collective. Sorry, Madam Chair.
So as Councillor Jones, it is just collective data, it's not named data, because I wasn't realising how extensive the sharing was going to be.
Yeah, we've got no intentions to be opening up our customer data. That's not part of what this work is doing.
Okay, I'll do. Do you want to come in quickly, Councillor Fleming? And then
Thank you, Chair. Cheryl, that information's available publicly anyway. Our residents' survey, those reports are available. Our partners' reports, those type of reports are available publicly anyway. So I'm not. If you're not going to share the raw data and you're just going to share the sort of broad brush reports that come from that, they're all public documents. So I don't really see what was to be achieved here.
Thank you, Chair.
I've got Councillor Lagan first. Okay, Councillor Swain next.
Yes, I can imagine there's quite a lot of internal data that isn't publicly available, perhaps on something like homelessness, where sharing it in the aggregate with other authorities could be benefits. Nothing, as Cheryl says, no information is going to be identifying individual people, but I can see that some internal information will be of benefit if shared with other bodies.
Okay, and Councillor Lagan, then Councillor Stamp, then Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just two things. One, the quality of the report is excellent, so I'd second that. And the other point is I totally agree with Councillor Fleming. I think if there's steers and direction from government, I think we probably need to defer this just to be really sure that we've got everything right, because we've got this oven ready if necessary to come out, and the concerns that are being raised now can be alleviated with just a couple of tweaks, and away we go. So I really support what Councillor Fleming says.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to bore everybody, but I've just done that for afternoon or thingy course on 12 local government digitalisation outcomes with key action points checklist for councillors, and it actually says at the leadership, ensure your council has a clear plan, strategy to drive digitalisation across the council. Ensure your council has the culture and enabling environment for digitalisation to thrive. It's a massive document, a lot of work was covered, and my immediate points when I was reading the report, the points I've put is, what does it mean to residents? Cart before the horse. A workshop is required for councillors to actually understand how the data is going to be collected and used for what. Is it for an analyst at this council to look at the data they're collecting to make our services better, more robust, more fine-tuned? We need to know why we're going to be collecting this data. I actually read on page 249, Madam Chair, the data declaration working group asked itself what a successful implementation of this commitment set out in declaration would look like. Who was on that group? What is it? It's just we're actually being asked to approve Appendix A, but who was on that group? Is it members of the council? Is it a generic one that's just been produced in Essex? And I'd also like to know, Madam Chair, how does it align an Appendix B, supporting policies and strategies? How does that align with everything that we're actually putting together? Another two questions, I know I've had more than one. How will the data be protected, same as Councillor Fleming? What happens about cyber security, the protection of firewalls, encryption? And what about our cyber resilience when we've got data collected? We all know, and the people I met on this course were from up and down the country, and you'll be amazed at how many people have had cyber attacks, and they have actually, with some of the information that has then come in as their cyber attacks, rendered their councils inoperational because it's taken out everything that they need to use. So I actually applaud this coming to council, but I don't think there's enough information, and I certainly won't support it at this stage. I think members need a lot more training and a lot more understanding of what it means. I think it's a key buzzword, Madam Chair, but until you actually, I was amazed at how deep this subject was. And if anybody wants to actually read the book they actually promote to it, is a book called Accelerate. And if you start to read something like that, you might understand what they're actually wanting to do and what it actually means. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Ms Hughes?
Oh, sorry for Cheryl.
On a couple of those points. So the section around adopting data integrity and data security, and obviously we do outline within that we would be GDPR and all the security compliant with our data use. And obviously part of this strategy and the action plan associated with it is making people aware and making sure we are GDPR compliant and that we do use data properly and store data properly. So in having the strategy in place, it actually supports those concerns. That's part of what would be driving it. In terms of the working group, it was an officer working group that put this together. And it's been taken through all Essex authorities in terms of signing up to it. There was another question. Sorry.
Councillor Stamp, what was the other question?
How does it align with policies and strategies? What does it mean to the residents and members? Why hasn't members had a workshop to understand the detail? And I do think we need to actually have a little bit more information about the digitalisation, because it will come. Central government, if you look at central government's departments, they use a lot of it now anyway. But we're a district council, Madam Chair, and I think we just need to be cautious. Don't mind signing up to something if I know what I'm signing up for, and I don't think there's enough information to do it.
So the government strategy is what shaped the Essex strategy and the Malden strategy, and it's linked within the main report. So there is a national strategy that I'm not aware that it's designed to change. That's what set out the best practice that we're trying to work towards in this report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fluker?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Like a page and a half agenda item generates so much conversation. You know, Chairman, I must admit, 3.2, it does concern me slightly about this sharing of data. You know, my feeling generally about these type of agenda items, you know, I can remember when I was Chairman and Vice Chairman of Strategy and Resources, we used to rehearse our meetings, Councillor then Sismi and myself, with officers so that we could basically work out all the questions that were going to be answered and then put the answers in the report, which meant we used to have very, very brief meetings and they all used to work well. So, but really, you know, the one that I'm really interested in is, and I've said this before, people often go, because we don't have, even though we agreed to have an executive summary at the beginning of all agenda items, we still have to go to implications. And on this one, impact on resources financial. Data-given approaches enable us to make best use of the limited finances and target the areas that need it most. Well, Chairman, that really doesn't speak to whether or not we're going to spend more or less, or there's going to be a surplus or a deficit. And I think it would be useful for these things to be expanded so members can fully understand what's going on. But, Chairman, save as regard this sharing of data. And having read the report, it seems to the actual data declaration from page 247 actually gives quite a good insight into how this is going to be done. So, generally speaking, you know, I would support these recommendations, but I think that it may have been useful to have a members' seminar on this on Teams, you know, and then you'd find that it would probably fly through this evening, Chairman. 3 minutes.
Yeah, Ms Hughes, would there be any implications if we defer this for the next agenda?
Just other than we wouldn't obviously be signing up to the Essex Declaration at the same time as the others, but otherwise obviously it would just delay the programme of work.
Yeah, and do we know what the financial risk is? Is, you know, would have been charged to sign up?
No, it's just that we there will be a delay in us moving towards best practice and that partnership working.
Okay, and would it is it tied into devolution?
No.
Or is it standalone? Okay, thank you. Councillor Fluker?
Just let me come back briefly. I mean, the thing about these things are, for all we know, all of the councils that are listed at the bottom of page 247 may well have debated this and had their own concerns, because at the moment it just says they've been involved in the drafting. I mean, I don't know who's, but I presume Miss Hughes has been involved in the drafting from Malden. But have we got any feedback for all of these other partners? Because they're all there, all 36 of them. For all we know, they might have changed things. We then sign up to it and they've actually changed something that we haven't seen. I know somebody has to go first and somebody has to go last, but, you know, is this a live document? Is this out of date? I really don't understand it.
Miss Hughes?
We don't necessarily have control of shaping the document. The document is being designed by the Essex Partner Officer Group, and it's just a case of whether we sign up to it or not.
Okay, so briefly, Councillor Fleming quickly, and then Councillor Channer, and then we'll go to the vote on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Cheryl, do you know how many have actually signed up then at this stage?
No, I don't know at this particular moment in time.
Okay.
Councillor Channer?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question earlier on, and this is actually an addendum to that or an addition to it, and the reason I did ask it because on page 252, it does refer to the fact information comes in many forms: policy documents, minutes, statistics, operational data, case files, personal data, and research papers. And then when I read the document, and I'm not saying it's not a good document, Ms. Hughes, so I want to make that clear, but my brain was trying to work it out. I couldn't see then where that then was disseminated into how that applied into why the mention of personal data, etc. And then on 256, the other thing, page 256, when it's priority 1, I noticed it referred to, we will improve officer and member use of data by ensuring we have the appropriate tools for using and sharing it, and create key performance indicators to ensure our data is being used and the quality is being improved. Now, to me, it's mentioned members there. So I immediately came to think that is going to be data I'm processing, because I'm a data controller or whatever, data processor controller, that somehow members are also then going to have performance measures included with officers, or is it separate? Really, we're talking about KPIs. So does that mean members will have KPIs appropriated to them in how they handle the data and the quality of it? I'm not trying to be difficult, it's just that I needed to get comprehension of the document.
I think that could actually be split into two separate bullet points, because it's two separate points actually. What we're saying is we make it so that members and officers can access and use data, and the appropriate tools are things like mapping tools and performance report dashboards. And then that's the second point about we as an organisation will make sure that we've got KPIs to ensure that we're using and processing data in a good quality way. So yeah, I take what you're saying, that should be two separate bullet points.
Okay. Councillor Fluke, just briefly before I go to Councillor Siddle.
Councillor Channing remembered what she just said, prompted me to think this. There was a time, Chairman, you'll remember that members used to have to subscribe personally to ICO.
Yes. Yes, we did. Yes.
We used to pay 35 quid and then
Yep.
we used to get it paid back.
Yes.
And then somehow that dropped off the radar.
Yeah.
So I don't think we were protected by ICO, and I just wondered if that should ever have stopped.
Ms. Hughes, do you remember that? I'm not sure. We used to pay for a fee to the Information Commissioner's Office as members, and then it used to be refunded to us. In fact, it was such a long time ago. I don't even really remember it stopping.
It was, yeah. In fact, Essex, when I was at Essex, I think Essex did it jointly. It could cover me for both districts. I'm trying to remember correctly, but we had to pay at one time £35 or something. I think that's a number coming into my brain, and I'm not sure about that.
Sure. Okay, Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we are now confusing GDPR with this document. GDPR already protects the sharing of data and personal data. That is built into legislation. The reason why you don't do ICO anymore is because the legislation changed a couple of years ago. So that's the reason why. So GDPR came in 2018, I think it was. So that then changed all of that. If you look at page, I can't read that, 258, it says that we will ensure, part of this policy is about creating these things and about creating these controls and these things. So it says the right data is available to the right people and only them, using a privacy by design approach. So we are ensuring by adopting this policy that we are protecting that data, not release. So it is, if we hold back on this policy, it then holds us back in terms of creating these things. And that's what I see in terms of this document. If we sign up to it, it will enable us to be more effective in how we use our data and the way that we control it, not less. And I think that's one of the crucial things.
Thank you. Well, I have to say I actually have concerns about this one myself, with how far the data sharing is going, and I'm not sure that we've had enough information. We've got recommendation little I, little 2, and then little 3. But if anybody wants to propose a little 4 that is deferring for another meeting till members have looked into it, I'm open to that suggestion as well. So members, down to you.
Chairman, I think there was a proposal on the table to propose, to accept those 3, and I think we should do that first. And then.
Okay, Councillor Siddle, would you like to put your proposal again?
I put forward those 3 recommendations to be adopted.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Oh, Councillor Chan has seconded it. Okay, members, should we do this by assent?
That amendment, I think.
With that amendment.
But Ms. Hughes said about the 2 bullet points.
Well, no, we're just voting on them as they stand. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Right, members, show of hands, please. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we have any abstentions? No, well, that's carried then. It looks like we're accepting those as they are on the order paper. Right, okay, well done, members. Moving forward to agenda item 15, new fee for the collection of waste upholstered domestic seating containing persistent organic pollutants. And who have we got for this one? We've got Mr. Holmes for this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for the tongue-twisting title of this report, but you'll see that there is a new fee and charge being proposed for the separate collection of waste upholstered domestic seating, or WUDs, containing persistent organic pollutants, or POPs. You will see that the legislation has changed from the Environment Agency with compliance required from the beginning of January 2023, but there has been an extension of that deadline to August 2023. Section 316 of the report gives members an indication of the type of materials that would include the POPs, and you'll see that in a range of sofas, upholstery, kitchen, dining room furniture, pretty much what you'd find in most households. Obviously, there is implications to our existing waste and recycling contract in that we do offer bulky waste collections. So officers have investigated how we might be able to comply with the legislation to collect this material and store it separately. And we've been working with our refuse contractor, Suez, to look at a number of options. And you'll see that option 2, under 324 of the report, in terms of how we might be able to collect that separately and manage it, has been identified. That would result in an additional charge, one-off charge for £14.50 on top of the existing bulky waste collection, and that will allow for the material to be collected and stored separately in accordance with the regulations. We are very conscious that we don't want to create a situation where we might accidentally increase any fly tipping and people disposing of materials inappropriately. So we want to reoffer the service, and we have just reintroduced that service for residents, and you'll see that's been done for the last 2 months of this financial year to allow those types of materials to be collected, and we would recommend that the additional charge is included in the fees and charges going forward for 23-24.
Thank you. Before we go to questions, we've got 2 recommendations. Little 1, that members approve an additional fee of £14.50 is the list of fees and charges for 23-24 for mixed bulky waste requests containing woods, to ensure that collection costs are covered for their separate collection as per guidance provided by the Environment Agency. And little 2, that members note the new fee will be introduced for the last 2 months of 22-23 financial year. Predicted income would fall within limits set under delegation to ensure the services can be offered to the public as soon as possible. Okay, Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you. I mean, with large items, they may be, residents may want them just collected as an individual item. Would one just charge the £14.50 for that rather than the double? It seems unjustifiable to charge the double fee. The other thing I note with some of these smaller ones, the inclination would be to take them to the tip. What happens in that situation?
Mr. Holmes.
Thank you. So no, this would be a charge on top of, because there is a cost of the truck going out and collecting the actual item itself. But because it has to be also stored in a separate way, it's effectively an average cost. What would it cost to actually process per collection? So I'm afraid it would be a charge on top of. What happens if you take it to the recycling centre? That can be taken there, so residents can actually do it, and the county council would dispose of it appropriately and store it and dispose of it appropriately.
Okay, Councillor Channer and then Councillor Lagan.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes just used the word collection, which I understand. But let's say you've got 4 of these kitchen chairs. I think they come into the equation, which are your waste upholstered domestic seating containing persistent organic pollutants. Would they be treated as, let's say you've got 4 chairs or 6 chairs, is that deemed as one collection costing £14, or is it every individual item in that collection will attribute the £14, just to get the clarity on that?
Per collection.
Per collection, right.
Okay, Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. It's difficult. At least it's not the WE Act when that came in. Waste electrical equipment. Yeah, they love acronyms. You have to look at this 2 ways. One, any burden of increased cost to residents is a burden, and we don't really have any choice. If you step away from it for a fraction and you think it's put on the authority by the government, these things are really nasty. So when they, if they went in the ground, they are horrible things. So having them taken out of the generic waste stream and actually treated so that these poisons aren't in the ground makes absolute total sense. And as Mr. Holmes has said, from experience of running these types of services in the fall, sending a truck out, and you think about how big our district is, you know, if you're sending it down to the Dengie for £14, it's probably cheaper to do that than what it is to run it in the petrol and take it to your tip. So as much as I really don't like the additional charge, I don't see any other way of doing it, and support it, and thank the officer again and for a really concise and clear report that says, look, this is this is the way that we need to think. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Councillor Fluker?
Yeah, thank you, John. Just a couple of things on the finances of this, and you know, clearly this report is something for the armchair politicians. But this, where is 3.2.1, 3.232? I'm a bit surprised around the economics of this, because if you take an average bulky collection fee, say £50, I think the minimum fee is around about £30 or 35. But if we take on an average of 50, based on, say, an average of 100 per month, that's £5,000. I can't see, even at the moment, how Suez can provide 2 operatives, plus the lorry, plus the fuel, presumably taking somewhere to be sorted and then disposed of for £5,000. So I thought maybe I've misunderstood this. And then we go to the implications. And under Roman 4, it says the service provided should be self-financing. So members are asked to support the necessary additional charge. I mean, and this goes back to my favourite expression, I hope accountancy. I mean, it should be. You know, I'd like to think that perhaps the Director of Service Delivery can move us into our comfort zone and expand on what he means by should, and if it means that it isn't. Thank you.
Chairman, so the figure that has been calculated has been done with Suez, and I wouldn't be expecting to pay any more than that amount per collection. So effectively, it's a plusage on top of the normal bulky waste collection, which should cover any additional costs for either separate vehicle collection and the storage, and then the safe disposal of that material.
So if I come back, Chairman, I mean, that begs the question. I mean, it you know, obviously, if there's no default payment to the council, that's fine. There's no reason why we shouldn't go with this. But I just find it extraordinary, having dealt with Suez over the years, that, you know, they're managing to put two operatives, the lorry, the fuel, the cost of running the truck for £5,000 a month. But yeah, I think that just perhaps if you'd worded.
Before we commence the business of the meeting, there are a few housekeeping.
Oh, that was
Well, that's the ghost of Maddie Thompson.
Councillor Thompson, that wasn't me.
But
not only have I been a ventriloquist, I've changed my voice. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Right, sorry, Councillor Fluker.
So
if you be brief, please.
Yeah, of course. But well, I've got my timer running, Chairman, and even allowed for Councillor Thompson, I'm only at 2 minutes 42 seconds. But again, you know, if that paragraph, Mr. Holmes, if that had been expanded out slightly, I would have saved you 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Thank you.
Mr. Holmes.
Noted, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, members, if there's no other questions, we'll go to the vote with the recommendations, little 1 and little 2. Can we agree those by assent, please? All those in favour? Yeah, lovely, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 16, which is statement of consultation, the local development plan review, issues and options document on pages 265 to 388 with Ms. Anne Altoft-Shawland. Oh, she's there.
Chairman,
Good evening, Anne.
Chairman, before you start.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam
Councillor
Chairman.
Sharon.
Yes, please, Madam Chairman. May I declare an interest in that regarding the consultation responses, which I believe are online, I'm sure Ms. Altoft-Shawland will confirm that because the link goes to the website. I just want to declare, Madam Chairman, that a friend, many acquaintances and my husband actually did respond to the consultation, so I'll just declare that. It's their views, and so I just thought I'd put that on record, but I don't think it stops me from involvement in this item. Thank you.
No, I don't think so, and I think we're all in the same boat with friends commenting. Okay, Ms. Shawland?
Yeah, good evening, members. So this item is the statement of consultation from the issues and options consultation. The consultation ran from 17th of January to the 1st of April last year, and it's part of the methodology of the local development review, local development plan review. So we had 490 responders, made up of various organisations and people, members of the public, parish councils, businesses, statutory consultees, developers, agents and various groups. So in the main, there was support for the vision and objectives of the LDP review. Lots of comments about infrastructure, which is not surprising really, and which is also a reflection of all the comments that come back from members that we've been having for the last 2 years. Strong objections to matters like building at higher densities, but you know, we've got plenty of room. We don't actually have to do that. We don't want, we choose not to. Support for climate change, which affirms the priority the council has given that in its business planning. With regard to infrastructure, the majority of the respondents thought growth should be located where there was access to bus and transport links, and that development needed to be connected by to the nearest settlement by pavement, which is a good support. There was support for a major project policy. Various comments, but I think the one thing that we picked up throughout the whole response was that all the comments about infrastructure, and they were scattered throughout the whole of the consultation. Nearly every respondent mentioned it, and you know, I don't think we could count them because there were so many of these types of comments. And I think that just is a reflection of how important that is to the council and how important it is when we continue planning in the future. So the next step is we need to publish this statement. It's part of the process of the LDP review. And what we do is we will then, as we work through each of the policies and the next steps that we go through, we'll take out parts of this consultation and we'll use them to help inform our discussions and decision makings. So just as for example, when we come to discuss something like a self-build policy, we'll take out the relevant comments and they'll form part of our debate and discussion when we get together to talk about that and work it out. So the recommendation is that we accept this statement of consultation.
Okay, members, Councillor Stamp.
Madam Chair, I reserve the right to come back when the debate starts, if that's okay with you. I'm actually confused about what we're actually going to approve tonight. Are we going to approve that we acknowledge that we've had all these responses, but we're doing nothing, or what? Is it just for noting? Because my understanding is that at a later date, some of the responses may go to make a LDP or some strategies, but we haven't agreed anything yet. So are we just agreeing the summary of the responses that the officers put together? Thank you.
Miss Eltoft Scholland?
Yes, what we're doing is we're agreeing that we've got consultation responses and that we're publishing them. That's what we're doing tonight. We're not going to use them in any work until we get into the process of the LDP review. They're going to help shape the policies of the review.
Okay, Councillor Stamp.
Thank you. I won't come back after this. So we're not actually agreeing and tying ourselves down to anything, only the information. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. I see that, as what I understand under the Town and Country Planning Local England Regulations 2012, it says it's basically a statutory obligation that we have to fulfil. So under point 18.1, it says a local authority must notify the bodies specified in paragraph 2 of the local plan and local planning authority proposed to prepare, and invite each of them to make representatives to the local planning authority about a local plan with what subject ought to contain. So that's really what we've done. We've gone out and we've said, look, we're doing a review. This is a part of the statutory process that we have to do, and these is the response. So it's a data collection exercise where we've got all of these steers from people in the district, our residents, so that it can then park it. Then it can come to members, and members can look through those and distillate what the really important aspects are, i.e. your infrastructure. Obviously, we could have done that sitting at home. So am I 100% clear that that is what we've done? And we've got 490 respondents. That's quite low, but it is what it is. And one other point in there, I think it said in the report that there was and you have to excuse me. I've made a few mistakes today and I don't want to make another one. So it says that there was, I think, 28,000 responses. And when I looked at one of the questions, I mean, there's some really decent responses and some, you know, I always talk about going down a rabbit hole for gold. There's a lot of, in a table, there's a lot of first names, 23,400 responses. But there's a lot of names, last name, organisation, and the information is blank. Is that 28,000? Is that just the numbers of cells on the spreadsheet, or is that the actual number of cells that were filled in with feedback that came back to us? So there's two sides there. One, just confirming that that Section 18 is just a statutory tick in the box. We've done that, and now we've got this data. And two, was it 23,400 actual written responses, or is it 23,400 cells in the spreadsheet? Thank you.
Miss Eltoft-Scholland?
I think it was 23,000 cells on the Excel spreadsheet, because we just couldn't count. We just couldn't count all of the individual responses. It just was, you know, it was just too much, really. To be honest, it didn't really achieve anything. So.
Yeah, so I'll just come back. So will we count the actual responses that came back? Because is the graphs that are included in the report just for these responses? They obviously have to be, because you can't put nothing in about nothing, can you?
Sorry, what was the question?
In the response, where you do the synopsis at the end in the report that says, you know, question 1, and then you've got the pie charts. Obviously, there's nothing where somebody hasn't given you any information. You haven't put anything in there. You haven't included that as part of the question. Yes, is yeah. Yeah, I've got the answer.
Your mic is breaking up on the line.
So, Sybil, do you want to explain it?
If somebody else could repeat the question for me.
Yeah, I think Councillor Siddle's really got he's picking up what I'm shoveling, so I'll pass it to Councillor Siddle.
Councillor Siddle, yeah, perhaps I can hear you better.
We had all those numerous questions, and one of the things I think in terms of this consultation, one of the things we have to learn about this consultation is the questionnaire was far too complex, and there were too many questions, and it turned people off. So one of the things we learned from this, the consultation is good, the data that we've got is good, but because there were so many questions, that's why there are blanks. And why people didn't fill those particular things in. Maybe they didn't feel it was relevant. So when we consult in the future, we have to ensure that whatever we consult on is user friendly and is something that people can use. In terms of this, I think it sets us in a good position now to move the local plan review forward. And yeah, we can use this as a basis, ensuring that we take into account what residents say in terms of any options that we narrow down, which is where we're going next.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Swain, then Councillor Channer, then Councillor Fluker.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I can quite see that we need to publish the results of the consultation, and as Ms. Eltoft-Scholland says, that can be helpful in moving forward various policies. But there's one respondent that we have responded to in this document, namely the County Council. My question is really whether we should publish the County Council's responses. Well, we should publish their responses, but we shouldn't publish our responses to the County Council. In other words, all the red bits in the document.
Yeah, I think what Councillor is asking, are we publishing our comments to Essex County Council, or are they being omitted, the bits that are in red writing where it says Council's response?
Yeah, so we were intending to publish our response, but with regard to the county, they've made comments, but we have duty to cooperate meetings with them. So their response to our policy creation will be iterative. So as we move forward, we're going to have to work with them much more closely. And when an organisation like the county makes comments on something like issues and options, it's always very broad, and it doesn't really have the nuances of what you would actually discuss in duty to cooperate meetings, to be fair.
Okay.
Chair, seems to me that we would have to take into account what the county council say, and we're putting that out there in public and effectively, what should we say, hamstringing ourselves to some extent. I would think it's not a good idea to publish those replies because, as has been said, the areas will be covered, or those points will be covered in the duty to cooperate and the dialogue, continuing dialogue with EEC and other partners.
So I think what Councillor's asking is, would publish them prejudice any future changes to policies or responses in light of the comments to the Essex County Council responses?
No. We have the right to. We have the right to introduce our policies as we wish, and they have the right to comment as they wish. And the comments they've made may not be the final comments that they have, because we've got to put lots of work on the policies. So where they talked about, I don't know, I'm trying to think what they talked about. Let's talk about highways. So where they talked about their views on the highway in their comments, those views may change when we do our transport modelling. So it's almost like a snapshot in time that they've given us a view on. I mean, we can take our responses out and just do a generic one at the end saying, thank you for your comments, we'll take them under advisement and we'll talk to you in our duty to cooperate meetings. It doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Okay, so I think members have got some concerns on it being a bit premature, but I'll put that to vote before we make the other decisions. Okay, I've got Councillor Channer and then Councillor Lagan, and then we'll go to the vote.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the reason Councillor Stamp may have asked about how this would be used, because 4.3 does say the Council will use the statement of consultation and consultation responses in the continuing work of the LDP review as it moves towards the next Regulation 18 stage of preferred option. So obviously that implies, well, it's more than implies, it will indicate some of those consultation responses will help her shape not only policy, but maybe a preferred option. But can the officer say that it's not that's not exclusive? It's not just those consultation responses. Regarding Essex County Council, then what I would say, if we're removing the responses to their representation, I believe on the website, and to correct me if I'm wrong, because the link in this document, mod.gov, appears to take me to the website of our authority, and I think all the consultation responses are on there, are they not, with the responses of officers? And correct me if I'm wrong on that. Councillor Siddle's quite correct in terms of, I actually think there may have been more people would have responded. I'm aware people did become frustrated in terms of actually when they were filling in, they might try and keep going back to documents. There were background documents going in. When they then came back to where they'd filled in a question, disappeared. And also some people, I'm aware, did actually complete the form, whether they answered all, they actually rang the offices where it did say an officer would assist. So I think there are issues here to be learnt on the consultation in terms of making sure when you're going into it, you don't find things disappearing just because you go back. Because some of the background documents, I was informed, were very lengthy and actually required a bit of time to read, and you might have wanted to tweak your response having read the document more than once. So I just make those points. But I think we need to be clear of what the use is, and that's, I think, what Councillor Stamp's point was trying to get clarification on clearly. And to me, it does indicate they will be used, and in fact will influence both policy and possibly the preferred option Regulation 18. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think a question that I'm seeing coming out of that is, have they already been published to the public?
Via this agenda.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But yeah, do they go to a link on the website though, a separate link? It's not just on the agenda.
Well, on mod.gov, when you go onto mod.gov, the link that's in the report, it says, these responses are able to view in the mod.gov library on the council's website. I clicked on, and there we go, council's website, document public consultation responses. So I took it to be that is in the public domain. It's on there. And then when you click on the PDFs, questions 1 to 7, you've got a raft of all the names,
So it's already
views, and then the council's responses. Hence why I'm saying, why if we're saying we're now going to take off Essex County, the response to Essex County Council, we've got a host of members of the public here where it's already out there. And that's why I'm saying, am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. And what I've just been told by Mr. Holmes is, although they've been published, it's down to us to approve them, which still seems the wrong way around. I presumed they were just in the agenda for tonight. Right, okay. We've got Councillor Lagan, Councillor Fluker and Councillor Stamp.
Thank you. I'll be quite short. Yeah, I'm just a bit reeling by what's just been spoken there. I think if you'd indulge me, basically on section 1, the purpose of the report, I think where it says in 1.1, the purpose of this report for the committee is to consider the statement of consultation in regard to Regulation 18, which we've already talked about, issues and options documents, which was subject to public consultation between the 17th of January 2022 and 14th of March 2022. The decision this report recommends will support the delivery of a lawful and sound Malden District Development Plan review. The statement of consultation is attached in Appendix 1. What worries me a fraction is the decision this report recommends. There's no decision that the report recommends. So what I'd recommend is, on recommendation to the council, is that we just change the recommendation, because it hasn't been motioned yet, that the statement of consultation of the Malden District Council Local Development Plan Regulation issues and options document be noted rather than approved, because it's not a decision-making document.
Yeah,
it's just an information document. We've collected this data. We're looking at it, we're going to take it to the next stage, because then we have to go through working groups and members to be able to decide what the next stage is. And officers will make sure the regulations are all ticked.
Okay.
So it's going to be used.
Yeah, Ms. Alton-Toft-Shorland, I mean, how does this affect governance and the regulations? Does it have to be approved? And would it affect the outcome if it was just noted before it went to council? How does that affect us? Would it put us in jeopardy in any way?
No, I don't.
Or put us at risk?
So what you're saying is this committee notes it, but council will approve it.
I thought that's what you were saying, Councillor Lagan. What were you actually saying?
Well, no, because I think it's noted, and I think that when we go to council, we can also say that it's noted, this report to be noted, because the report is to satisfy. The report is to satisfy Section 18 of the regulations, which I've got it here, is clear. It doesn't say it has to be approved, and then once we go to council, we say that is noted. So we've done that piece of regulatory work, we've got the data, and when we next move into the next stage, when we start to look at shaping what the LDP actually wants and what we want to be able to put in there, we've got this plethora of golden opportunities and information that residents have given us for us to be able to look at. You know,
yeah, sorry. So I think the simple question is: does it need to be approved, and what risks would there be, or what outcome would there be if we just noted the report?
No, I think we'll be okay, to be honest. As long as it's been through the process, you've looked at it, we can publish it. It's part of the process. We're going to use these as we move through the rest of the work. I think it'll be fine.
Okay.
Chair,
right,
we're talking about approving it for publication.
Published.
It's already published. That's the whole thing. That's what we're asking. It's already been published. That's the whole thing. Right. Well, Councillor.
Why is it on the agenda?
Thank you, Chairman.
Exactly. Well, that's what we're asking: is why are we having to approve it when it's already published? That's what it's boiling down to. Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just a tad concerned about what Ms. Shorland said, insofar as the fact that, to quote her, I think it will be okay. This is a local development plan. I've sat through 2 public inquiries. I think that Councillor Chan has probably been through 3, and these are the sort of things that come back to haunt us. And bear in mind, this meeting tonight will be available for people to listen to. And previously we've said we could have done better with regards to this report. But, the officers are tad hog-tied, because if you look on page 266 at the top, sorry, I hate you to miss what I say. You know, if you look at page 266 on the top, you know, unfortunately, officers had to use emergency powers, and I believe that Strategy and Resources, for all the reasons that were said tonight, weren't particularly happy and wanted the opportunity to pursue this further at council, but clearly didn't get that opportunity. And I think with hindsight, it would have been good if we'd had a working group round about that time, where we could have thrashed out the questions in this. But going back to Essex County Council, I'm really, really concerned about what's been said, because if one reads the response to the Mangaps application in Burnham, Essex County Council have basically said no more housing until you build a secondary school. Now, you can read that response, it's crystal clear, just type in Mangaps under the search engine, you'll go there, and it's quite damning. And they also say quite clearly that they didn't support any of the 7 options that we sent out. It's a really, really interesting report, and I was going to email Ms Shawlan and say that I think as a matter of urgency it should be considered with the very, very least the policy or the LDP review group.
Okay, right. Well, if I might come in, because I think I'm getting a bit confused as to what are members' concerns. Well, if you help me out to ask Michelle, what are members' concerns with approving this document in simple terms? But I don't know if anybody can put them in really easy bullet points.
Chairman,
I know. I've got all the individual items like the problems with Essex County Council saying no more housing until a secondary school's built.
You know, at the end of the day, all we're doing is approving something that we've just pulled together the information. So I think Councillor Lagan's got a proposal on the table, but Chairman, if that fails, then I would propose that we agree the recommendation and move on.
Right. Okay, thank you. I'll quickly go to Councillor Stampton and Councillor Channer, and then we'll listen to the recommendation before we go to the vote. Okay,
thank you. Mine's only just to support what Councillor Channer said about the consultation. I know it's going over old ground, but on that digital course, I actually gave that example, exactly that example, and they actually did say that that really shouldn't have happened, about the 60 questions and that there was no save button and all this sort of thing. They actually felt that we should have done better, I think is the polite way of saying it, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Channer.
Madam Chair, I'm just a bit concerned or cautious about just saying to note this, because 4.3 does say that it will be used. And I think we're noting, if you just note, that doesn't give a clear indication to people that may have answered that consultation that their information or what they shared, their thoughts and the answers the council gave will be used. So that does concern me if we just do a noting process. Under the approval, I'm not sure that totally spells it out either, if I'm honest. And to me, if we're going to use it, we should make that clear in perhaps anything we're recommending to council.
Ms Shawlan-Toft, do you have any comments on what Councillor Channer said?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm quite happy to either be noted or approved, as long as it goes through tonight, really, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think what I'll do, Councillor Logan, before I take your proposal, I think what I'll do, I'll take it to the vote as it stands, and if that fails, then we can hear your proposal afterwards. Just quickly.
Just a real quick one. So if we do approve this, do we are actually approving for page 266, all of 4? So that includes the revised draft settlement hierarchy pattern. Are we approving all those at the contents of this report? Because I certainly don't approve that. We've not actually said about discussing the hierarchy pattern.
No.
So that's where my concern is.
That's where, Madam Chair, sorry for talking over you, but that's where you asked for the list of concern. It's 4 and 4.1. The issues and options consultation document set out the following.
Yeah.
So where it says revised draft settlement hierarchy pattern. So the way that this reads, whatever's in here, we agree to it.
Yeah.
So whatever's put in there, we agree to it. That's the point I was trying to make. You know, it says we agreed whatever is in here, that's the vision for the district to 2043.
Because we've not talked about it.
Where it should be a document to inform. I think we've done the piece of work. I mean, I don't want to keep us talking ourselves around. We've done the piece of work. We've got the data to be able to inform the next stage of the review. I'm worried that, and we've come up with burnt fingers before where we've agreed something thinking it's one thing and it's not. It turns out to be another. And this is such a contentious and delicate issue. I'd hate to sort of tie us down to something.
Councillor Channer?
Well, I think that's why we need to be clear what it should be, because there's a whole things, and Councillor Stamps just highlighted revised draft settlement hierarchy pattern.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. If we take it to the vote and see if it's accepted or not, and then if somebody wants to put an amendment forward if it's not accepted.
Yes, and you also look at Appendix 1. It makes specific reference to Appendix 1, which is the consultation.
Do you know, I think reading this, I think it says it's only Appendix 1. I think the more we've debated this, the more confused it's got. I think what we'll do, we will take it to the recommendation now, which to the council that the statement of consultation
Point of
on
order.
Malden.
Sorry, I hate using that. I'm terribly sorry, but I think my proposal was before the recommendation was seconded. So if someone seconds my recommendation,
Okay, well, we'll have
been
your
substantive.
proposal, and I thought we did the main vote first. But what is your proposal? Okay, Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, I've got a question for Mrs. Arthur-Shortland. In terms of the summary of key issues and in terms of the document that's just been stated about the settlement hierarchy pattern, can you confirm that those items were agreed before it went out to consultation? Because that's my understanding, is they were agreed at that point before the consultation document went out.
Thank you.
That list of items are what was in the consultation. So people have commented on that list of items. Now we're either approving or noting their comments, and then we'll take that piece of work and later on in the process, at some point, you'll get to redo and re-talk about that list of items. Okay. And then, so it's really, it's almost like, it's part of the evidence base, it's part of the work that we will all use in order to form the policies and the work that we're going to do later on in the process. So you haven't agreed anything in the LDP yet.
Yeah, Madam Chair, why don't we
if I might come back, I mean, why then was it in the report in general that we received if we're not approving it tonight? I know it specifically relates to to Appendix 1, and maybe it's confused the meeting because it's all in there.
I think it's just a recap of what was in the instead of going over the whole of the consultation. I think it's just a very broad recap for members to know what the consultation was actually about.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Siddle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the issue arises around 1.1 and the last paragraph, or the second last paragraph. And if that was to change to that this report's recommendations will support the delivery of a lawful and sound Malden District Local Plan review. And we take out the first bit, the decision. And then it says this report's recommendations will support the delivery of a lawful and sound Malden District Local Plan review. Then that makes sense in terms of what we're deciding tonight or agreeing tonight.
Yeah, I still think for me the report's a bit muddled. Councillor Lagan, what was your proposal?
I agree with Councillor Siddle. I think maybe something like that, but maybe just in simplistic terms is to say that this is to inform future decision making, and also maybe on point 4, which is the one for me, is 4.1, where it says the issues and options consultation document set out the following. So the issues and options consultation document included analysis of the following. And then you'll tell us they're the bullet points, because what you're saying is this is what was here, and then the data that we got was back in Appendix 1. Now that you can't approve that data. You can approve the report, but you can't approve that data because that data is just there to inform decision-making processes further down the line. So how can you improve someone when someone says, I do agree with the spatial picture of the district, 24% said no. How can I prove that?
All right, well, so are you putting forward a proposal that we note the report prior to it going to full council for debate?
I think that probably the easiest way would be that, Madam Chair.
Okay, do I have a seconder for the proposal by Councillor Lagan, Councillor Stamp? Okay, members, can you give me a show of hands for assent if you approve the...
Chairman.
Sorry, let's go to Tara.
Sorry, just my query is that the report is, so you're including Appendix 1 in respect of that's the statement of consultation, because that's what's That's what I'm being asked to approve. So we're saying we're noting the statement of consultation. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think, that's what Councillor said. He wants to note the statement of consultation prior to it going to full council, because there are some concerns over the data and implications included. Does that sum it up, members? Okay, right. All those in favour of the proposal of Councillor Lagan? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 1. Okay, that's carried then. So the motion by Councillor Lagan to note the report prior to it going to full council, and I suspect there will be some questions on what is included in particularly into the items that are mentioned outside of Appendix 1, and it might be that that's reviewed before it goes to full council. Is that okay, Ms Althoff-Sholand?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, I think having the other information on there has kind of confused the issue for members. I think if it had just been Appendix 1, stopped at Appendix 1, I think that would have been really easy to approve. But okay, thank you for that. Thank you very much for your report. Thank you, members. Okay, right, agenda item 17, the South Essex Parking Partnership Operational Reserve Parking Project Proposals, pages 389 to 390, and that's over to Ms Green.
Thank you, Chairman. As members are aware, we are part of the South East Parking Partnership, and we were notified towards the end of last year that there was a official name is Operational Reserve, but for any other purpose it's a surplus in the monies that are available through the Parking Partnership. Under the agreement we have, that surplus can be redistributed back to the local authorities that are part of that partnership, which is indeed what was agreed. And the council have been made aware that there is now £186,000 that is available for us to call down for projects. The projects need to be related to essentially car parking activity. So the legislation sets out the provisions, which is in the report. What we're asking for tonight, members, is approval to pull down on that reserve for 3 specific projects. And the projects are in the report, and they, in summary, there is a project which is aiming to bring forward to members a car park charging strategy. So that will enable us to ensure we have a consistent and fair policy going forward with our car park charges, enable us to look to make sure that we are applying those principles fairly. The second, and as part of that project, there will be a task and finish group with members, so members will be involved in that proposal, and that will help inform a review of our car parking charges this year, ready for next year. The second proposal is a project which is looking at some additional car parking. So this is for a feasibility study that will look at a whole range of feasibility options. So that is the second project, members. And the third project is to fund the resurfacing of one of our car parks, which is a White Horse, and then some significant repairs to the second car park, which is in Butt Lane. So, members, that report is before you tonight, and we're just asking for you to consider those options, members. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fleming. Oh, but hang on, let me just go to the, before we start discussing, there is a recommendation, and the recommendation is that the 3 projects detailed at section 3.7 below are supported, and an application is submitted to the South Essex Parking Partnership to utilise the operational reserve to fund these projects, all of which fall within section 55 of the Road Traffic Act 1984. Okay, Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be frank, I was disappointed when I read this report, really disappointed, because for starters at 1.2, that statement in 1.2 is factually incorrect. The monies do not have to be used for parking. I know, well, in fact, I sat on the SEP that approved Rochford's proposals, which they have funded the Highways Rangers for a year. They funded 2 other schemes. They funded the purchase of air quality monitoring equipment. So to say that we have to use this money for car parking just is not correct. I just would like that clarified. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Porteous. Is you,
I think the screen can.
Ms Green.
Thank you. We aren't saying it has to be spent on car parking. It's car parking related issues and highways related issues, which fall under section 55 of the Road Traffic Act.
If I can come back, it doesn't have to be related to car parking. It doesn't have to be. And I know that because I sat on the set that voted through Rochford's proposals. I was also disappointed at the lack of member engagement. This was just dished up to us. I mean, I understood that there would be a car parking working group to discuss this operational reserve. You know, prior to that, I just think this has been handled very badly. Thank you.
Ms Green.
Chairman, this is the second time that we have had this surplus that is available to us. Previously, it was a couple of years ago, and the process that we follow this evening is exactly the same process as we have followed previously. The reserve, when it was made available, I do have a copy of the minutes of this meeting, was this matter was referred back to the lead officers of the District Council to come forward with proposals back to the SEP Joint Committee.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Fleming?
I still would just like Ms Green, you know, it doesn't have to be spent on car parking. The monies do not have to be spent on car parking. So 1.2 is factually incorrect.
Madam Chairman, that is an excerpt from the Road Traffic Act.
Okay. Yeah, actually, members, I do know that we had some issues raised with something that won't be brought up by Councillor Mays, who I've allowed to speak at this meeting, even though she's not here. And, sorry, no, not a member of this committee. I'm sorry, Councillor Mays, you disappeared. You're the invisible person. But no, I think we have got some governance issues, and unfortunately the 151 officer couldn't be here to answer those issues. And it is one option to defer this so we can get these cleared up before we come to a decision on it. Because I, personally, as chairman, I don't want to come to the wrong decision, and I don't want to do something that isn't fully accepted by the Section 151 officer. I'm happy to take the debate, but then we can decide afterwards whether we prefer to defer it or not. Mr. Porteous, you might be able to assist us with the governance issue.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Yes, Mrs. Green has said that. Those are that is what is stated in number 1.2, that all or part of the cost of the provision and maintenance by the local authority of the parking accommodation for vehicles otherwise than on highways, roads, and whether in the open or undercover. So as far as we're aware, it meets that.
Can we apply a broader spectrum and still meet the requirements? I think that's what members are asking, if I'm reading the room.
We would need to look into that, come back to you.
Okay, thank you. Right, I've got quite a lot of questions. Councillor Swain, then Councillor Stamp, then Councillor Siddle and Councillor Fluker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think there's a verb missing because presumably it should say may be used for these purposes, but there isn't a verb there. Now, this is built up from PCNs. This is a matter of information. Is our fund a shared out part of PCNs collected across the whole SEPP area, or just surplus from PCNs in Malden? That's for information. But as far as I can tell, there are many things that the funds could be used for, some of which, should we say, are really for the SEPP to take up, and others which for the district council to be able to use. And coming back to this question of, well, what happened or didn't happen last time on governance and the non-meeting of the parking task force, I think members need to see the whole range of possibilities of what these funds could be used for, to enable a more informed choice of how we would like to see the money spent.
Okay, Mr. Holmes.
If I just go back to the previous payment that was made to the district council. So the process, as Mrs. Green has said, it came back to a committee for a final decision. So the car parking task and finish working group has traditionally had a focus on fees and charges rather than capital works of the council. So you could argue that the expenditure here could be either for capital works. Now the previous was actually funded our pay and display equipment. In exactly the same situation, the council was able to use set money to fund the replacement of equipment, and this committee, the equivalent of this committee, made that decision, which obviously then released the capital of the council back into general use, which could be used for other projects. So that's the process, and that's exactly the same process which we followed now. We've got a number of identified projects which the council is looking at. We put those forward for funding this evening, and members have been asked to support those projects. So I just wanted to say we haven't gone away from what happened before. This is the process we have followed in the past.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief because Councillor Swain, I actually agree with him, which is very rare nowadays as well. But totally agree. I do think we could do with a few more options, and I do note that it doesn't have to be spent immediately, so there's no pressure on it. I think, car parks do need some work, but I also can name some car parks in Burnham on Crouch, especially the doctor's surgery, which is an absolute nightmare. And to say it's outside the health practitioners, it's a disgrace. And I was always told by Mr. Holmes, and I think he's going to rue the day he told me, when we walked round there, Mr. Holmes, you actually agreed at what state it's in. But yet again, I see that it's all Maldon-centric again with any funding that's going to Maldon and doesn't seem to go outside. And I'm sure Councillor Fluke is actually going to turn around and say he's got the same. So I actually don't support these recommendations. I think it should come back, and I think some alternatives should be put forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Siddle next.
Thank you, Madam
Then
Chairman.
Councillor Fluker, then Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, it does not have to be spent on car parking. It can be spent on environmental projects. It can be spent on a variety of different things. So that is not true, and we've had that information from the person at SEP that it can be spent on different things. The thing about the first item, the car park service, that's already been budgeted for out of council expenditure. So I can understand. I know we're under financial pressures, but we've got this money. Let's be creative about how we use it and the way that we use it. I know what you did before, which is fine, but it doesn't mean we have to do the same process again. And that's I think the frustration is members do not feel that we've been consulted, and this has been foisted on us without that consultation. So we do need to have a consultation on this. I understand the lead officer is the one that's going to make the decision, but that doesn't mean that they don't come and consult with members about the decision. So the lead officer will go back and say, this is how we want to spend it, but surely with this sum of money, it should be down to members to say, this is how we want it spent, or this is how we'd like it to be. So I'm putting forward a recommendation that this is deferred, and that from this committee, and the representative from SEP is on that working group, that we have a working group from this committee to work out, including the SEP rep, how this money is spent.
Seconded. Yeah, I agree.
Before we vote on that, I'm going to go to Councillor Fluker. My only concern is whether this should be a council-wide consultation if we're talking about spending different money in different wards. But Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Look, we know that these projects are in the budget. My first question would be the 28,000, the 7,200. Please tell me that we're not going to take on additional staff and consultants to do that work, because the additional car park, well, we've been through that before, and the deliverability of a car parking charging strategy I think the deliverability of a charging strategy, I'd like to think that we could do that in-house. We've been dealing with car parking and charging now for donkey's years. But there's a couple of things that concern me about this. I mean, Councillor Siddle makes a good point that these figures are covered off in the budget. But knowing how this has worked in the past, my advice to members would be to agree these recommendations, but on the understanding that the £172,700 is actually ring-fenced, because we were going to spend this money anyway out of our own. We have to do the work in Butt Lane and Whitehorse, otherwise we won't get any car parking income. But if we go ahead and get the money from SEP, at least we've secured our money. We could find that if we don't get it quickly, we might not get it. It's then under no application. We've got to put, I mean, Councillor Chan nodding, and I think we were put under pressure once before and we lost the money. So what I'm saying is take the money, but on the assumption that the £172,000 that we've already allocated is now ring-fenced for other projects in relation to highways. So all the members can then come together. They've still got their pot of 172,000. We've got the money from SEP. We know it's not going to affect the budget. And we can act quickly. So my proposal would be is that we take the money, but £172,000 from the general fund is ring-fenced for highways projects. Otherwise, you may lose your money.
Should that be SEP-related projects rather than just highways?
Look, I think, we should, I know what Mr. Holmes is saying, and I know what's gone on in the past, but, we've always used this money to back fund our own funding. Let's not make any things about that.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, the proposal is to accept the fund and ring fence it for members to discuss how they want it to be spent.
We've already budgeted to do these. Yeah, so what we do is we go back, I've got to be careful what I say really, we go back to SEP and say, thank you very much, these are the 3 projects we're going to do. Take their money and tell them we're going to pay for those projects, which we were going to do anyway from our own general fund. We then carry those 3 projects through, and then we actually ring fence the money so that we can then use that, because it's not going to affect our budget.
If I can have Mr. Holmes to clarify, then Councillor Channer.
I just wanted to clarify of the 3 figures. So the 137,500 is in the budget. The 28 and the 7,200 isn't. So that effectively would be new projects that would come forward for members to consider at some time in the future. So we basically said these are waiting in the wings. We could use this funding for it. So what you actually would be doing is saying, yes, 137,500 is budgeted for, and that would be a saving. The 28 and the 7,002 are not current and not within existing budgets. So that is slightly different to perhaps as you described.
So, I mean, the car parking charging strategy, I would have thought, is an operational matter which can be dealt with in this council. I mean, whatever strategy you come forward to has to be agreed by members. So there's a good starting point. And who knows, the car parking working group might well raise itself like a phoenix from the ashes of fixed penalty notices. But, and the £28,000 for an
Councillor
additional
Fluker,
car
can we
park.
have this shortened a little
Yeah,
bit, please?
well, I don't want to lose the money, and I feel it might be a chance.
Okay, Councillor Channer, then Councillor Siddle.
Thank you. Well, actually, Councillor Fluker referred to general fund. I think we're talking about capital here regarding the car parking one. I've heard what Mr. Holmes has said about the car parking strategy. That actually did come up in a debate when we were going through some of the budget considerations regarding car parks, and there's going to be quite a lot in that, and I believe that it was agreed that the car parking task and finish group could be come alive again, sort of rising from the ashes, I guess, like a phoenix, but that could be applied still with that strategy coming forward for members to consider. I'm going to say, actually, I will place trust in our officers. I believe they would have considered various things that could be covered by this significant amount of money. And I don't think they would bring anything forward to this committee that wasn't well considered and well thought out. So I would be supporting these recommendations, because actually, Councillor Fluker's right, yes, it might have been in our budget certain things, but actually it's a good way of spending the money. It's a big scheme, the car park surfacing, Butt Lane and White Horse. So I will be supporting these schemes that have come forward from officers.
I think Mr. Holmes has got a suggestion that might help with this issue.
And I'll need Mr. Porteous to listen carefully and tell me if I'm wrong. So effectively, that 137 is in the council's budget. If it's actually funded by SEP and it's used for that, it does actually then release the council's budget, which could potentially be ring-fenced for other projects, such as other works that could be carried out as indicated in other around the district. Is that correct, Mr. Porteous, in terms of that's a possibility?
That's correct, Mr. Holmes. The 137,000 currently being funded out of the Capital Receipts Reserve. So if it was funded from the SET money, that would effectively add 137,000 back to the Capital Receipts Reserve for other capital projects.
Okay, so that means that we could then decide the smaller projects as proposed, but also not risk losing any funding. Okay, I've got Councillor Lagan, then I've got Councillor Fleming. Is Councillor Lagan?
Yeah, I've only got just a quick couple of observations. One is, the first thing I'd say is we should learn about, like in 1.2, there might be a conflict of what we understood in the past, but what we can do going forward. It's not a criticism of anybody. It's just, if we're going to put something in a report, we've got to be crystal clear with spot, right? And I do agree with the leader about officers. However, officers are human beings, and often they miss things. There might be options that come out there where we can look as members at other aspects. So whilst the leader is obviously not interested in my comments, but is looking at, yeah, but that's okay. You do that, and I was speaking that way. I think that's important to note that. Also, and I now understand exactly what Sam and Mr. Holmes and Mr. Porteous are saying. Makes perfect sense. 3.5 says the council to apply to use 186,000, but the total operational reserve to be requested is 172. That difference, what's the reason for that difference, please?
That's currently the amounts that are in the current project proposals. So that's the estimate of the car park charges and the other two projects that are currently going through have been approved as project approvals. So it's just the total of the 3 projects that currently are already approved projects. That we can pull down the additional amount. So for example, we are undertaking some additional works relating to the White Horse car park, for example. So it is possible that we could include that within the request. So we could essentially, if members were agreeable, we could pull down the whole of the surplus in one go.
I would do that, very much so, thank you.
Okay, so I'll quickly go to Councillor Siddle and then Councillor Fleming, and then actually, Ms Green, if you can get that proposal put into a nice parcel, then we can put that forward to the vote. Okay, Councillor Siddle?
Well, my understanding is the car park strategy is part of the corporate strategy projects team. So we're looking at, so we've now got duplication. The corporate projects working group is looking at car parking strategy. So, why are we getting this separate thing in terms of a strategy now, or is it because we're going to use it to fund that? My other concern in terms of this is there's been no consultation with the strategy team at the council. So this is surely being decided by the service delivery team. Why haven't our strategy team being consulted about it? And I understand that that officers have made decision and have probably thought about the decision, but the whole thing about this is the lack of imagination. That's what strikes me about this. It's a total lack of imagination of what to do with this extra money, and it's like, and that's the thing that I find frustrating.
Okay, Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, to be frank, I was frustrated and really disappointed, not just because of the factually incorrect statement at 1.2, just because I looked at Rochford's proposals. It was actual delivery on the ground of things that would benefit the residents. And what did we do? We put in car parking resurfacing, which is already budgeted for, plus money for consultants. And it just, for me, I just thought, well, here we go again. Well, you know, our default position is we get extra funding, whether it's, you know, whatever fund and we just don't deliver on the ground. We employ another officer and we write another policy document. And that's why I was so disappointed with this report.
Okay, members, so Ms Green, what were you suggesting that might give us the keep safeguard the funding, but give us the option to use the funding for different projects?
Madam Chairman, if it's okay with you, I'd just like to clarify that we did consult with the strategy team, and actually Mr Butcher was fully on board and fully aware of these discussions, and Mr Butcher has given me further information regarding two of these projects that are already going through Project Board.
Councillor, if it's brief.
Yeah.
We need to come to the vote on this one.
Yeah, but I'm sure you talked about it, Mr Butcher, but did you talk about climate change? Did you talk about EV? Did you talk about charging? Did you talk about putting those things in? No. And those are all part of this, what this could be used for.
Chair.
We just got, are you coming back, Ms Green, or was it a statement rather?
It's really just a statement. It's just to clarify that our approach has been that this funding will be used to fund existing projects that are already approved in our budget and in our projects portfolio. So it's not bringing forward new projects. This is to fund the existing projects that are already approved.
Okay, then Councillor Swain, this is the last. Councillor Swain and Councillor Channon, and then that's it. It needs to be really concise because then we're going to the vote. Like it or not, that's where we are. Okay, yes. Councillor Swain.
I'm concerned that there are works and projects which this through SEP, which some of these funds could be used for, rather than being solely used for NDC work. So we are sort of shutting off the possibility of expediting a number of SEPP projects.
Yep. That's good. Okay, and Councillor Channer, and then we go to the vote.
Well, Madam Chairman, what I would say is Miss Green or Mrs Green, it is Mrs Green, I think, because Lance Fortius said that. I think she's summed it up. These were projects the council have already agreed, so that makes sense to me because we've seen that they're important issues that we need to do. And by agreeing with these, and it will bring, as it's in the report actually, the implications, it will provide additional income to the council, but also enabling then the council to have the ability to redirect the capital funding to other capital council priority projects. And that's what I think we need to focus on. We need to recognise there's other capital projects that are important, that by doing that allows us to perhaps consider those. So I'm going to say I'm supporting the recommendation as is, Madam Chairman. I am.
So what's on the table, but with the proviso that the...
It is on the table and it's been seconded.
So what was your proposal?
My recommendation was that this item be deferred and that a working group made up of members of this committee before, with consultation with members to look for projects about how, and also consultation with someone from the strategy team, and also a consultation with our SEP representative sitting to my right here. And after that consultation, we then decide on how this money is going to be spent.
Just before we vote, well, that's what I'm going to ask. Ms Green, is there any chance of this funding being at risk whatsoever?
Members,
members, quiet, please.
This funding is the end of a current arrangement that's been made with SEP around the surplus distribution. So it is funding which, because we have moved into a new agreement, will need to be accessed. At the moment there is no immediate danger, but I would say that there was always that risk. If other important projects come forward from other district councils, there is a risk, but I wouldn't say that that's an immediate risk.
Yeah, exactly. So my recommendation is that the working group meet within the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, actually, members, I'm going to possibly make an amendment to Councillor Siddle's proposal. I like the idea of discussing it through members and the SEP member to decide where the money is going to be spent. But my concern is the risk. So I'm mindful to accept the recommendation, ring fence the 137,000, and after we have the funding, then we can discuss any projects we want to move it on, because I don't want to risk losing that funding, because that's too much money for us to lose. So I think Mr. Holmes can make a...
The essential difference, you'd pull down this amount from SEP. You would spend that £137,000 of SEP's money doing that servicing work, freeing up your £137,000 of council money, which you then, of course, could have your working group look at other projects to spend that on.
Yeah. So from the chair, I would like.
My recommendation is first, you're one statement, and I'm quite happy to move that afterwards if Councillor Siddle.
Okay, right. Well, if we go to Councillor Siddle's vote first. Yeah, exactly. That's my concern. I remember when we lost the funding. We have lost SEP funding before because other councils claimed it.
Madam Chairman, if we agree this, that's fine, because when we've got 137 freed up, and that's like, I think what you're saying, then can be utilised.
That's
not the other way round,
yes,
otherwise
exactly.
we're going to place ourselves at risk.
Exactly. We do it the other way around, as Councillor Siddle's suggesting, we could lose all the funding, like we have done in the past. So my preferred option from the chair would be to go that we accept the funding, then distribute the second 137,000 at no risk. So if we vote on Councillor Siddle's proposal first, and then if that's lost, then we vote on the second proposal. So members, all those in favour of Councillor Siddle's proposal? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's lost. Those against, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now we'll go. Now, Councillor.
I move, Madam Chair, and we agree the recommend.
There's been so many proposals, members. That's why we need to get the discussion short.
We agree the recommendation, and that frees up 137 for them to be considered.
Right. Okay. Now, Councillor Siddle's proposal wishes to accept it as it is, to ring fence the 137,000. Then members can have a working group to meet to discuss the whether funding's spent.
In the summer, with a new people.
Madam Chairman, just make this clear. Agree the recommendations of the projects, and then the other 137 freed up will be ring fence for members to agree. But to me, that should be on the capital projects already done. But okay.
Councillor Siddle and Councillor, I'm not taking any more proposals. But if you've just got a very short comment, Councillor Siddle and Councillor Fleming, really short.
Yeah, I personally do not see the need for a feasibility study for the additional car parking and the 7,200 for a car parking strategy. So I can't agree those.
Okay, Councillor Fleming.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. Why can't we ring fence the full amount, the 172? Because,
well, let's vote on the proposal put forward by Councillor Fluker first, because we're getting bogged down with this. So, members, are we going to vote on Councillor Fluker's motion? All those in favour?
Can you just clarify the motion? Chairman, mine is that we agree the recommendation at 2, and then we had another recommendation that we ring fence the surplus £186,000, which we generated, I think, from the receipt fund. For funding future projects, and I think we just leave it like that, and then we can meet, do it like we did with we were going to do with the corporate plan. Sort it out with the new administration.
Absolutely, that sounds like a really good proposal to me. Exactly. Okay, all those in favour of Councillor Flukel's proposal?
Chairman, can I ask clarity? Sorry. No, I'm serious, because it says the 3 projects. And I didn't think we agreed the 3 projects. We agreed the amount, but not the 3 projects, Madam Chair.
Mr. Holmes.
No, my understanding is, Madam Chairman, we're agreeing the recommendation to agree those projects.
Leader, through the chair, I actually asked the chair, please. Thank you.
If I understand it correctly, Mr. Holmes, we are agreeing the recommendations, but the car parking will be funded out of the budget. And so that money won't be spent on that item. It will be ring fenced, and members can discuss at a later date how it is to be dispersed. We don't want to lose the funding. That's where we're coming from.
I think my understanding, Chair, is that members are not happy about the 28,000 and the 7,200. So that's what I read. The 137, I think we've accepted that, yeah, we could use the SEP funding for that, freeing up our own capital to do other works with. If members are not happy with the 28 and the 7,200,
could they come back as well?
I think they will probably have to come back. We have to put something forward to SEP. Of projects, we can't just say yes. We want that total money without projects to back it up. I think possibly the way to do this is to claw down the 137,500 against an identified budget. Perhaps we could report back to members on the two other projects, the 28 and the 72, because there is some justification. There is justification for asking for those amounts, and we obviously need more detail to be able to justify those. And maybe we could do that in the next meeting of the Statutory and Resources, and you could again decide, and then we can make a further approach to SEP within a month or 6 weeks.
Chairman, point of order. I believe that the 28,000 and the 7,200 are already in the budget, which is due to be presented to this council on Wednesday, the 22nd of February. So the only way you could take it out would be at that meeting. I don't believe that this committee can take that out. It would have to be taken out at the budget meeting.
Chairman, I'll look to Mr Porteous to confirm, but I don't believe the 28,000 and 7,200 are in any other budget at the moment. They're in a future works programme that should be identified through the commercial strategy. So what this fund was looking to do was to pull those two projects forward out of the commercial strategy and fund them. If members don't fund them through this route, at some point they would have come forward to council to say, would you please support them? This is that opportune moment. So it's only the 137,500 that is in budget that could be replaced. If you want more information on the two other projects, I suggest rather than say no completely, we give the opportunity to come back to members. You could reconsider those projects.
Well,
Madam Chair, where are we with the proposal now then, Mr Holmes?
Well, mine would be to agree these recommendations as is, Chairman, probably. But
and we haven't voted on. We've got to vote on Councillor Fluker's proposal first. I think we know what the proposal is.
I think what.
Full support, Chairman, to the 3-minute rule. Thank you.
Chair, I think what Mr Holmes has just said is the key thing. We have to have a justification to SEP for drawing down the money. Mm-hmm. We can't just take the money and say, well, we ring fence it and think about it later.
Yeah, I think Councillor Zane's quite right that we either have to accept this or we don't, and if we don't accept it, then we're going to lose the funding. And I think what we have to in the past, we have done in the past, because other councils got in first and they took the funding.
Sorry, point of order, a bit of clarity there. The funding has already been divided between each of the councils that are the partners. So you will get your 186, as will everybody else get their 186. So there is no risk.
Right, well, members, I'm getting to the point now. We've done this. Either we agree this recommendation or we don't. It's quite simple. We agree it now with the amendment by Councillor Fluker, or we don't agree it. So let's take a vote on the amendment by Councillor Fluker. All those, are we in favour of Councillor Fluker's motion?
Which, just to clarify, Madam Chairman, Councillor Fluker's recommendation, we agree that recommendation, the 3 projects.
Yes.
And then he made the additional one.
And then, yes.
Because just for clarity, once we get 186,000, if for any reason members don't want to go ahead with the feasibility study and live with the car park, that could be reported back to SEP and money can be returned. You know, I don't want to sound too naughty here, but that can actually happen. So, you know, you've got your 186,000 on the table. My advice would be to support my proposal, and we'll take the money and run, and then you know that the new administration's
Okay, all those in favour of Councillor Fukel's proposal, please show.
Yeah, agree those.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 2. Okay, well, Councillor Fluker's motion is carried. Okay, right, moving on.
Before you move on, sorry, I just want to clarify, because Councillor Fluke, could you say something else? It's just agree the recommendations with the ring fencing of that money.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. After all that, we finally got it. Okay, thank you, members. Right, on to agenda item 18, which is supplementary estimates, Virements, procurement exemptions and use of reserves. 1st of October to 31st December 2022, pages 391 to 394. And that is Mr. Porteous.
He's no longer with us.
Who is no? Oh, he's back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the usual report that comes to Strategy and Resources Committee each meeting. All decisions have been made in accordance with the rules and regulations. So really, it's just for noting.
Okay, members, are we happy to note that? Councillor Fluker.
You know, obviously reports for noting no longer come to committees, but this one is for it to be received. And I think the reason why we have these reports to receive is so that members can comment. Chairman, I'd like to go 3.5.1. Chairman, I presume that, bearing in mind, to the best of my knowledge, Malden District Council only owns one buoy. The balance of them are owned by either Trinity House or the Harbour Commissioners. So I presume we're talking about Thurslett Buoy here. The procurement exemption says that this is specialist work to be undertaken by one contractor, and that there's no other contractors with the required lifting equipment capable of undertaking the work in the River Blackwater. That is not correct. In fact, there is a long-established company operates on the River Blackwater who have a shallow draft tug, highly manoeuvrable, and it has a huge hiab on the back, and they actually do work for Trinity House out in the Thames Estuary. The operators also have smaller workboats. They have their own quay. They've got the facility to lift buoys out onto their own quay, repair them, put them back into the water. This company, Chairman, I can confirm to this committee, were not contacted at all. And as I said, they've been in existence for a long time. I believe, Chairman, if they had have been contacted, then we would know whether or not this is a competitive quote or not. And I think that would put everybody in their comfort zone. So I'm really, really concerned about how the procurement exemption came apart. I believe, Chairman, that this contract may well have been let. I just look at Mr. Holmes, and he might be able to let me know if it's the contract been let, Mr. Holmes.
Chairman, the work has been completed.
Thank you, Chairman. If that's the case, Chairman, I believe that there has been a breach of the procurement exemption rules, and that the matter should be, Chairman, without or debate or vote, be referred to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's been noted. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. Again, mine's on 3.5.1 because as a current member of the Harbour Commissioners, I looked at that and thought, that's the Commissioner's role. But then I believe it's the Thurslett Buoy that's there. So if I could ask if in a description in the future, if the detail could be put in, it just clarifies where it was actually from and what the work was actually done. And Councillor Fluke has raised some very good points. But thank you.
Mr. Holmes.
Chairman, I believe it was a number of the navigation buoys down the river, it wasn't one buoy. And the council have a responsibility for maintaining those particular buoys, and the chains needed replacement as a matter of urgency. If it would help members, I can get a more full statement, and I can happily circulate that to members of the committee for review. We'll give you a bit more background, number of buoys and the work that's actually undertaken. My understanding is this work was time limited, and I think it was about availability of contractors at the time. And maybe that statement there is not correct, but my understanding was it's a time limited issue. But I will be more than happy to get a sort of full statement for the committee and share that for your information.
Chairman, look, this is getting worse by the moment. We're now saying it's an emergency, yet the report doesn't speak to an emergency. Nevertheless, this talks to the fact that there's only one person that can undertake this work. I also believe there's somebody on the north bank of the river that should be consulted. This is a failure of procurement of this local authority. Now, this committee, I don't think it's up to this committee to look at such failures. I think that's the role of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I think, Chairman, my proposal is that the matter of the procurement exemption in this particular matter is referred to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As clearly something has not gone
Councillor
right. Thank you.
Fluker, that is down to you to report to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and not the committee as a whole.
Well, Chairman, if that's the case then, Chairman, I will use this moment to say that I'm going to raise a formal complaint against, I think it's the Director of Strategy, Performance and Governance for signing this off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fluker. That's noted, and I'm sure the officers will be hearing from you. Okay, agenda item 19. Any other items of business the Chairman of Committee decides are urgent? We do have one. There is one, but given it's a confidential item of business, it will be considered in private session following agenda item 21. Right, so we've got agenda item 20. I move that the committee resolves that under section 100A, little 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information designed in paragraph 20 from a report of this committee of Schedule 12A to the Act, and that this satisfies the public interest test. Do I have a proposer? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Swain. Thank you. I'll now invite members to make any comments on the report. So agenda...